Hello, and welcome to another video from 3.5 Archive. Today, we're going to be doing Prestige Class Review number 86, and we're going to be looking at the Runesmith Prestige Class from the Races of Stone sourcebook. Now, Runesmiths learn the very precise art of tracing magical runes into small stone tablets or other items, and using them essentially to contain the energy of their spells, and this allows them to cast spells without having to do the intricate hand movements that you normally have to do for the somatic components of your spells. And this allows runesmiths to wear heavy armor while casting spells, and this is a secret that is exclusive to the dwarves, as you have to be a dwarf, and that's fitting for the Races of Stone sourcebook, which focuses on dwarves, gnomes, Goliaths, and other races of stone. So to become a runesmith, you're going to need to be a dwarf. You're going to need to have 5 ranks in concentration and 8 ranks in craft stoneworking. You're going to need the feats armor proficiency heavy, which you get automatically de facto from any class that gives you heavy armor proficiency. And you're going to need scribe scroll, which, as a reminder, wizards get as a level 1 bonus feat. You're also going to need to be able to cast first level arcane spells. So there are a lot of different ways to get into this prestige class. If you play just as a wizard with a good intelligence, you can easily spare 1 slot of skill ranks to put into craft stoneworking. You're going to be taking concentration anyway, and you can just take armor proficiency heavy as one of your feats. It does cost you a feat, but if you were able to do this just as a wizard by default, and this is something that, like in 5th edition D&D, for example, where there is no inherent arcane spell failure chance for wearing heavier armor, taking the heavy armor proficiency feat in that game is actually a fairly common character build strategy, basically. And so if you could do that in 3.5, a lot of wizards probably would do it. It would give you access to full plate armor, which is going to be a lot better than casting mage armor all the time or saving up for bracers. And of course, you can enchant full plate armor on top of that to give yourself a much better armor class. So, getting into this prestige class is not at all restrictive. You can also get it just by multi-classing a bit into fighter. Pretty much any multi-classed fighter wizard will be able to qualify for this prestige class. The biggest restriction by far is that you have to be a dwarf. This is going to mean that you're probably not going to want to play a sorcerer, because not only will you have to take an extra feat in taking scribe scroll, but you also are going to have a charisma penalty to work with. So this is almost certainly going to be for fighter wizards or some other kind of full base attack heavy armor class that also will give you access to the heavy armor proficiency. You could, of course, technically take cleric levels if you wanted to get into this. It'd be a cleric wizard. That would be one way to go about it, but you're likely to be better off just actually going straight into wizard and using up one of your feats on heavy armor proficiency. And that's actually what the prestige class sort of recommends. So let's take a look at what you get for being a runesmith. You're going to get a d6 hit die, which will be a major downgrade compared to any fighter levels you might have, but if you're coming into this as a straight wizard, it will be an upgrade on the hit die. You're going to get half your level base attack bonus, which is fine. You get a good fortitude and good will save, which is a little bit of a bonus, and that is pretty good. You're going to get 2+ intelligence modifier skill points per level, which is equivalent to pretty much any of the classes that are going to be feeding into this prestige class. And perhaps most importantly, you're going to improve your arcane spell casting at each of the 5 levels of this prestige class, which already means that, you know, if you qualified for this prestige class with the minimal effort that it involves, and you just took levels in it and didn't use any of the features, at the very least you would be continuing your spellcasting advancement, no problem. So, what do you get for class features from being a runesmith? Well, at level 1 you're going to get rune magic. And this is going to allow you to prepare your arcane spells as runes that you inscribe on solid objects. It takes the same amount of time to prepare spells. You can still leave open slots and scribe runes onto something at a later time. And the idea here is that you do this so that you can wear heavy armor and not have to do any somatic components. You can't dodge the runic material component with eschew materials or anything like that. there's really no way to get around using the rune inscribed objects to cast your spell. So you are going to have to have access to be able to hold the object with the rune and cast the spell. But this is still a really great way to enable yourself to wear heavy armor. As an alternate example, perhaps the Spellsword Prestige class from Complete Warrior requires you to have 6 ranks in Knowledge Arcana, which is, I guess, technically less restrictive, but it's also less useful of a skill in some ways. And it's also going to only give you spellcasting advancement at every other level. And while it does let you just straight up ignore some spell failure chance, it's never really quite going to get to that point where it's viable to just cast spells and not worry about it while wearing heavy armor until you're very high level in the Prestige class. And by that point, your campaign is mostly over. It does give you the channel spell ability, but as we'll see, the Runesmith gets some pretty good things as well. They're definitely very different Prestige classes, but just on its face, the Runesmith looks a lot more attractive, at least if you are playing a dwarf. So at level 2, you're going to get Stonecraft Expertise. This gives you a bonus equal to your class level on appraise and craft checks related to objects made of stone. And this is just going to be kind of a situational bonus, really mostly a flavor bonus. It's going to max out at +5. And it's nice for when you are making those sorts of skill checks, but it's not going to have a huge impact on most campaigns. So it's kind of just filler. At level 3, you're going to gain the ability to share runes. This allows you to prepare a limited number of your runic spells so that you can be activated by any character. So the spell's casting time is remaining the same. The spell's level is increased by 2. And you can basically give this away to another character to cast. Basically, anybody can cast it, but it's going to increase it by 2 as if a meta magic feat had been tacked on. And this is really the downfall of this class feature, because while it's good to, example, prepare a shared rune of the fly spell and give it to somebody else and they can just basically have like a potion of fly, you don't want to be casting that as a 5th level spell. That really is going to take away a lot from your spellcasting efficacy. And while yes, when you play higher levels, you are going to be running into the situation where you have all these spell slots and conserving them does you no good. So you will want to, sometimes use up a 5th level spell slot for more powerful effect. This can be good, and in emergency situations where the party's going to split up, then this is good to have. But it's really hard to want to get to level 3 in this Prestige class unless your party adopts that sort of strategy a lot. If you're doing a lot of fortress raids with coordinated attacks and that sort of thing, or if you're involved with a lot of NPCs and you're coordinating plans with them, then this can be a lot better. You can have a maximum number of these shareable runes each day equal to your Constitution modifier. And of course, it takes up one of your spell slots for the day to do this. So while you could hand some spells to people as these sort of special potions, it's really not optimal to have to give this up. I mean, again, you didn't pay very much in some ways to get into this Prestige class, so to speak, but it still would be nice if this feature was a little bit less restrictive. It's not terrible, but it's not really, really, really desirable to go for, especially considering you could just make potions or that sort of thing. But it still has some utility. At level 4, you're not going to get a feature at all, so it's a dead level, which is, I suppose, excusable. Except for the fact that the 5th level ability, which is Permanent Rune, is a little bit lackluster. This lets you inscribe a permanent rune, permanently sacrificing an arcane spell slot of 1 level higher than the spell that you want to inscribe as a personal rune. You spend 24 hours inscribing it, and you spend 20 times the gold piece cost of any material component. And of course, you must spend XP normally, but otherwise you don't actually have to spend any gold by default, only if it has a material component. And once you've inscribed it, you can activate it as a spell-like ability twice per day. So there's really only a few spells that this is good for. Stone Skin is the immediate example that comes to mind, and that's really the only good reason to go for this feature. There are probably some other spells that are similarly powerful. You are going to have to go a level above, and you're going to have to, again, give up a spell slot permanently. But if this is a spell you want to cast every day, that's probably fine. And being able to do Stone Skin for free on yourself twice a day would be worth giving up a 5th level spell slot. But if you're not going to do something like that, there's really not a lot of reason to want this feature on its face. It's not very strong when it's being used for something else. I mean, yes, spell-like abilities are subject to fewer restrictions, but you're giving up a higher level spell slot for 2 lower level spell slots effectively. And that's just not a good strategy in D&D 3.5. Generally speaking, you're going to want to be making the most of your high level spell slots. If you're doing, 4 encounters per day, and say that each of those battles lasts for 3 rounds, you're going to be casting 12 spells per day in combat. And when you get to higher levels, you're going to be able to easily cast your highest level and second highest level, and then be filling in with your third highest level of spells. And by the time you get to this point, you're going to be a 10th level character, so that's going to be your 5th, 4th, and 3rd level spells. You wouldn't have much use for your 2nd level spells. You're not going to want to give up a 3rd level spell slot for a couple more 2nd levels. Those spells are going to be sitting at the bottom of your spell list in a lot of cases, unless you're using them for utility purposes. So you're going to definitely want to be very judicious with your choice. You're going to want to pick something that has a material component cost, because, yeah, you're going to have to pay maybe like 1,000 gold or something like that in order to inscribe a Stone Skin rune on yourself permanently, but it's going to pay off over time as you go through, 20 or so or 10 or so adventuring days. You're going to break even on it if you were casting it all the time, and then anything from that point on is just a bonus. Is this the greatest 5th level feature in the world? No. It does have some potential, but it's very narrow. You have to pick the spell carefully, and there's not a whole lot of options here, so it's not a really, really great feature, but it is flavorful, and it's a decent capstone for this prestige class. So how would I change the Runesmith? Well, maybe I'd come up with some sort of 4th level feature, maybe at the very least an improvement to the share runes feature to make it, just 1 level higher or something like that, or maybe just not have that happen at all. You could also add some sort of cost reduction for enchanting magical weapons and armor, although that can get out of hand pretty quickly. Still, there are other prestige classes, such as the one for gnomes that allows you to have discounts on magical item crafting, and that's apparently strong enough to be a prestige class and not be considered to be overpowered, so this should be fine as well. Overall, the Runesmith will get 4 stars for concept and 4 stars for execution. It unlocks a particularly useful gateway for magic users to wear armor, and it's a pretty creative way of doing it too, and it really fits into the lore that dwarves have associated with runes and the sort of relationship that they have with giants, that their language has with giants and the like. So it's very flavorful. It's a great prestige class mechanically for the most part. Just some of the features are a little bit lackluster, but even just going for 1 level is worth the trouble. You're going to get access to heavy armor, and that's going to be great. You're going to be a little bit slower, but you're going to be much better protected as a wizard, and this is, of course, great for fighter wizard multi-class as well. So that'll be about it for this D&D 3.5 Prestige Class review. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and so on. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time here on 3.5 Archive.